Hey Trails Collective, this is Ian here. I'm pretty excited to talk with you for a few minutes about a shoe that released in mid-September from Merrell. It's called the Agile Synthesis X, and it was a collaboration with Dogfish Head Brewery based in Milton, Delaware. And right off the bat here, I want to send a shout out to my good buddy Tom Bastian and the rest of the crew there at Dogfish. I'll be down there in a week or so to run the Angela Ivory 50K in Killen's Pond, so I'm pretty excited to meet a few people from the trail community in Delaware. So looking forward to getting down there. Hope everybody is all right, and thanks to your whole crew at Dogfish for going in on the collaboration. So Merrell off the bat, in terms of the ode to I suppose more ethical, more eco-conscious manufacturing, started this partnership, and as part of it they were going to do $10,000 donation to the Conservation Alliance. And as part of it, what really had me find the shoe to begin with was the eco angle that they were putting into the materials and the manufacturing of this shoe. So over the years, on a couple different occasions, I've looked into whether I could create a custom shoe company. And more recently, I was looking into some of the materials that have come along in the past few years that are more eco-friendly. Shoe manufacturing, the usage, how quickly they wear out, the obsolescence of them. It's a pretty awful thing in terms of the footprint and the impact. And so any steps that the companies can take toward improving the ecological footprint is huge. So that's what took me into the Agile Synthesis collaboration here. And then what drew me in was just seeing the visual and the aesthetics and how much detail they put into the upper and then the shoe as a whole. I think it's awesome. So we'll run through it a little bit. So starting with some of the materials. The outsole they're using here uses their 5mm lugs on top of 1.2mm kind of overlay for the outsole here. And in here they're using, I think it's what they call their M grip, which provides, it's a soft rubber. I'd say the traction, in my experience, isn't exceptional, but it's not bad. It's probably for Delaware and the trails around there. It's actually a really good blend between multi-surfaces, a lot of versatility to it. But they call it the M grip outsole, and they're using 30% recycled materials in it, which is great. Midsole material, and this is what really, in terms of the key word that took me into finding this shoe, was the bloom additive. And basically it's an additive that aids in the breakdown of the EVA midsole over time. It uses 10% algae in the shoe, and it's just really, I think, addressing one of the larger, nastier pieces of the shoe. In the upper, they're using 40% recycled mesh as a liner. They're using 100% recycled TPU overlays, as well as a fairly rigid and supportive heel counter here. And the equivalent of the plastics that they're using in it is 2 recycled bottles in the upper. So a really great eco story to it. Laces here also 100% recycled. So I'm pretty stoked about what they've put together. What I've found is that typical of Merrell over the past 10 years or so in some of their designs, they have a bit more natural foot shape and design to it, a bit more oblique toe box, allows the forefoot on the toes to be able to really splay out a bit more. It's probably a little bit more tapered around the 4th and 5th metatarsals and toes than other maybe designs such as the Mad River or the Nike Kiger or even the Topo models and the Ultra models. But it still probably would provide enough girth for most feet. Adding up the different materials in the outsole, the midsole, the upper, the stack height is about 30.5 millimeters in the heel and about 20.5 in the forefoot. Merrell tags it as a 6mm drop, but I was thankful, and a shout out to Roadrunner Sports for breaking down the different pieces of the equation to make it more accurate. And per those, it may be closer to an 8mm drop. On my foot, it feels about that. So how does it feel underneath my foot? So I've had a chance to run maybe, not a lot, but maybe 50 or so miles in the shoe so far. Right out of the box, it's got a pretty comfortable feel. The midsole material feels probably a little bit closer to what Topo's using, a little bit firmer underfoot than compared to other models such as Nike's midsole foam or Saucony's midsole foam. Maybe a little bit closer again to Topo or Salomon in that it's a bit firmer. The flexibility of the shoe is pretty solid. The probably shape, lug configuration is probably similar to the Topo MT3, and I was putting those side by side. And the grip of the outsole is probably pretty similar to that MT3. Not quite as good as maybe the Saucony Mad River, but they're all pretty similar. Not as good as some of the Vibram outsoles in terms of gripping around here. But for an all-purpose kind of crossover shoe, it'll do okay for most people. The protection underfoot, while the midsole is firm enough, and the shoe does have a rock plate underneath, I don't feel it too much. In the testing that I was doing on, in this case, to get the rock or the impact, I was doing some running on a railroad bed and getting the kind of the chunky rocks. Where I'm based in Ithaca, we don't have a ton of really technical terrain or rock gardens, but for me that was sufficient to go find that railway. So the rocks there, off-camber surface coming off of it, and what I found was I was for sure feeling the shots to my foot more than several of the other models that I was testing. With all that said, again, unless you're really spending a lot of time in fairly aggressive terrain underfoot like that, this is gonna do just fine for the vast majority of runners. Shoe comes in at $110, which I think is great, in line with MT3, maybe the Terra Venture, the Mad River, all in that ballpark. So doing okay there. The aesthetics, as I mentioned earlier, what also drew me to the shoe, a lot of attention to detail. I think it may be a very polarizing shoe, but I think it's a beautiful shoe at the same time. So for the full package and weighing in at 9 ounces, it feels really light, really nimble underfoot. So it may not excel in any one category, but for me, I'll value enough the eco angle, the partnership, what that company and Dogfish is doing for the community down there and on the ground and for families, and now what the collaboration is also doing in terms of the consideration for environmental impact and the give back in that regard. Makes it all worth it to me. It's limited edition, only around for a short time. So hop out there, find it where you can, give it a go, and yeah. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk more soon.